Welcome to the Investor Coaching Show. Here's your host, Paul Winkler.
And welcome to the Investor Coaching Show. I am Paul Winkler, talking money and investing and all things financial. Yes, that's what we do around here. And joined this hour with an old friend. I don't want to call you old.
Golly.
I know. I start off right off the bat, right?
Just come out swinging.
Charles Alexander. He, his website, yourcharlesalexander.com.
Well, look at you.
Do I have that right? Yes.
Perfect.
All right. Beautiful. Okay. So, you and I get into conversations which are always fun about business because, we talk about investing around here, but we also talk about, okay, how do you get to the point where you're making money that you can invest, and what do you do to make money? How do you run businesses and things like that? Because you work with a lot with entrepreneurs, and we have a lot of people that are listeners that are entrepreneurs, obviously, all around the country, actually. I know we had a huge listenership in like Texas and California and Georgia and all over. Yeah.
You're big in Bismarck.
Bismarck.
It's
North
one
Dakota?
of the Dakotas. I don't remember.
North Dakota.
Sure.
Yeah, capital.
Huh.
Okay, there you go. And Pierre, South Dakota. See? How do you like that?
There's two nuggets for you, listener.
See, look at that. I know my capitals. So don't test me anymore. So I got to start with.
Yeah.
You and I have a very similar story about vehicles from what I saw in my email this morning.
Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. And it was just funny because I started reading your email this morning. You send this email out to people that are like subscribers and to your stuff. And it was about a vehicle that you set it all up.
Oh, I pimped it out, baby.
Yeah.
It was gorgeous. To me, it was gorgeous. It to anybody else, it looked like something a punk kid would have.
Yeah. Fuzzy dice.
Oh, yeah. I had a lower red pickup. I was in college, and this is like one of the very first vehicles I went, bought it on my own, took care of everything. And nobody went and negotiated with it. And so I immediately did all the things you should do to a vehicle. I, lowered it.
Not everybody would do, but you would do.
Nobody would do. I lowered it, put chrome rims on it, a racing steering wheel.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, that's not even a thing anymore. Put fuzzy dice on there. Even had a Titans bobblehead right on the dash.
Yeah. I remember my 68 Chevy van.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Dodge van. Chevy. I said Chevy van. I'm thinking of the song. It was a Dodge van.
Yeah.
And put the stereo, it was wonderful. Put this partition between the front and the back, so that and stereo speakers in the partitions and it was like a little carpeting down, in the back, so it was just nice and you could hang out and you could camp back there, whatever you wanted to do. You just forgot one minor detail. So
look, the point of the story is I help people. A lot of business owners try to figure out how to do more by doing less. My whole purpose in life, I think, from this point forward, is just that in the
being efficient. We don't want to make it sound like lazy, because you're anything but lazy.
Correct,
but it's being efficient.
Well, being efficient at effective things, but in this particular case, I was very efficient on trying to make the car look good, very inefficient on focusing on the things that matter. So I'm on the way home from college. At MTSU, I was traveling back home. I'm from a town called Hampshire that nobody's ever heard of, minus me and the other 8 people that live there. And it's on a country back road, and it kept, I could see the little gauge going up. It's getting hot, and it started knocking. It's like, what in the world? And all of a sudden, smoke come out of the hood.
Yeah.
And it was a bad deal because, there's no cell phones. There's no way to contact anybody. And this nice gentleman picked me up, took me right down the road, gave me a quarter because my little punk self didn't have a quarter. Called my dad, and we started going back and forth through the conversation.
Yeah.
And, what'd you do? Well, I smoke it. When's the last time you changed your oil? Change the oil. Oh, help my time, son. You ain't checked the oil? And nope, I hadn't checked the oil. And I had all the bells and whistles on the thing and didn't take care of the one basic thing.
Right.
Motor oil that makes the car run. So that locked the engine up. And no more. My dear old dad had to bail me out of that one, find a junk engine somewhere else that we could replace it with. But it was a lesson that I held it near and dear to my heart. I was all focused in on the shiny object syndrome,
Right,
and
looking great on the outside, but not necessarily everything is going well on the inside.
Right. Had my priorities out of whack. And that makes that'd be a great investing story.
Well, it is a great story because we do that in so many different areas of life. It's like, the things, well, the story I like to tell in regards to that is just how people typically tend to do the stuff that they like in their workday.
Sure. Yeah.
Before the easy stuff, the things that they like doing, and putting off the things that they don't like doing. And that came from The Road Less Traveled, that
Correct.
book. Remember that book where, this guy is talking to this woman that
Robert
hates her job.
Frost.
Written by Robert Frost. I don't think so.
He wrote a poem, The Road Less Traveled, but either way.
Oh, no.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah. It was a book, and this guy was working with this woman. She hated her job, and she said, what is it you don't like your job? What do you like? Cupcakes or cake or something like that, I think it was. And she says, oh yeah, what do you like about it? I like the frosting. And he says, well, what do you do? I eat the frosting first, then I eat the cake. And she says, I know what you hate about your job. You're doing all the stuff in the morning that you love doing, and you're putting the stuff off, and then you never get to it. So yeah, that's very common.
Well, another book on that topic, Eat That Frog, which is a Mark Twain saying, but Brian Tracy wrote a book. If the worst thing you have to do all day is eat a live frog, which good God, how Twain ever came up with that, I don't know.
Do that the first thing in the morning. Nothing worse happens to you the rest of the day.
That's it. You knocked it out first thing. So looking at, I work with a ton of entrepreneurs, but this bodes well for anybody that has a job, a busy professional. It doesn't matter who you are, and then you feel tired, overwhelmed. You're tired of checking email at 9 p.m., or you've missed Johnny and Susie's soccer game again, or you pushed date night out another week with a spouse. One of the first things I always tell folks you have to really focus in on, what are your priorities, period? And most folks can't answer that question.
Yeah, that's really good, because I think about the different things that make your life work. And, quite often I'll ask people, I say, what makes your life work? And they'll say, well, and then I'll go, I have to help them, which is interesting. Okay, your relationship with your spouse, if you're married.
Right.
Your kids, if you've got kids, friends.
Your health and well-being.
Your health. Yeah. Your spirituality. Your finances.
Right.
Your and hobbies are another thing that I'll throw in there. But I'll throw a whole list of things, and then I'll have them rate it. And because they, and typically they're going, oh gosh, on a scale of 1 to 10, I got to rate this, and you find that one thing is a 3, and the other thing is a 7, and you're going, well, imagine this is this is the road of life you're going on. It's a bumpy road because you got things that are doing well and things that you just have completely neglected.
It's like the old analogy with the empty mason jar. And you have to fill it. And your options are stones, pebbles, and sand. And I'm sure people, I'll say some folks know what I'm talking about. But the old wives' tale goes: a philosophy professor stood in front of a class with an empty jar. Said, "Is this jar full?" They said, "No, it's empty." He said, "All right." He put 4 stones in there. He said, "Now is it full?" They said, "Oh, of course it's full." So then he said, "Well, hold on." He poured pebbles all around, and the pebbles filled in around the stones. He said, "Now is it full?" They said, "Oh, well, now it's full." He said, "Well, hold on." Then he poured in sand, and the sand filled in around the stones and the pebbles. Now it's full. Then he took a separate jar, said, "All right, well, we're going to go in reverse." He poured all the sand in, it just filled to the top. He said, "Is this full?" I said, "Yeah." They didn't understand the point. The point was the stones is just what Paul mentioned. Are those the core things that that make everything else go well? And to get morbid, are those the things that on your deathbed you'll look back at and say, "Oh, I wish I had time for," like I just said, another date night, or spend more time with kids, or hang out with Paul on the radio. Yeah. Or is it, do I want to spend 1 more minute checking another email, doing more internet research, doing more doom scrolling? That's the sand. So you just have to determine what those stones are and put them in first.
Yeah. So when you are dealing with somebody and they feel like they just can't slow down, where do you start with them?
Gosh, so a couple of different places. So when I ask people the same question, I get the same blank stares that you kind of get. I even had a meeting this morning with a client, super sharp. They're growing. What are the top things you got to do? Well, I don't quite know. There's some ugly work that I know for a fact that will work, but people have to commit to doing it. And the first thing you have to do is basically just kind of track what you're currently doing. There's all types of exercises. A great book you can get away with reading is The One Thing by Gary Keller.
I've heard of that.
Well, and it's about finding what are your top priorities. And that's there's a big push right now. What's your calling? What's your purpose? What's your why? And all of those are great. But so many people are so overwhelmed they can't do it. So I help people literally track what are you doing all week long. To use a financial analogy, it'd be like me wanting to set a budget. Well, Charles, what's the most important things you spend money on? I could make it up, rent, insurance, food. All right, well, we're going to set aside this money only to spend on that. Well, that's great if you know how you're spending your money. Most folks don't, so they have to create a personal budget. Me and the wife, we use Mint, and it automatically, kind of puts it out there for us, and we have to clean it up, fix the rest. But then we can say, hey, if I tell Sarah we're only going to spend $500 on groceries this month, well, that's cute. But if we're spending $1,500, that's not realistic. So that's the first place. You've got to track and figure out where your time is currently going. Once you do that as an adult, you can look back and say, all right, which one of these are the stones? Which one of these are the key points that if I do well that make everything else flow?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I'm smiling. I'm thinking, but that takes too much time to go and track where my time's going.
Gosh, I've had so many people argue with me. So that's why I use the financial analogy, or better yet, I'm telling you a true story. The day after the Super Bowl, I stepped on the scale. And it showed me a number I hadn't seen in a while. And I don't like that number. So I decided I got to get ruthless and start figuring out what the problem is. And it's all fun and games to say, I'm going to go to the gym more, cut back, but you've got to figure out how much you're consuming in terms of food. I use MyFitnessPal, a little app on my phone.
Right.
And then you realize very quickly what you think you're eating versus reality aren't the same. So when you want to grab a handful of the kids' goldfishes you help pack a lunch, well, there's 200 calories. Or I want one extra glass of wine as we watch one extra Netflix show that we don't have time for. And then all of that adds up. So the argument I get from people all the time, I don't have time to track my time. Well, that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
If you don't do it and you just guess or you think you know where you're spending your time, I can promise you, it's just like doing a personal budget. You don't know where your money's going until you track.
How do you do it? I mean seriously, what do you have like a piece of paper sitting in front of you? Do you carry like a notepad around with you?
It's different. It's different for different people. For me, what I found that works, and it's ugly, but I use a Google sheet, not even an Excel spreadsheet, a Google sheet.
Okay.
The purpose of that is because I can access it very easily from my phone or a laptop. Now, for other people, if you're out of the house, if you're in the field, if you're blue collar work, that legal yellow pad you have in front of you and a pen may work even better. For other people, they use an app like Clockify or Toggle.
So be super, super specific. What does it look like? Does it break the day into 15-minute segments, half-hour segments, and then you put in there what you did during that period of time? What does it look like?
I'm doing it as I don't try to break it down in 15, 20-minute segments. So for right now, when I fill in my timesheet, and I'm doing it this week.
Yeah. Good example. What's going on?
I'm filling out, all right, commute to Goodlettsville.
Okay.
All right. From 10 to 11, talk to Paul. And then as I travel back from 11 to 11:15, what I was just telling you, drop off something for the kids from 11:15 to 12:15, gym. Every single aspect. And as you change tasks, it's important to track it, because if you don't, you'll lie to yourself and say, well, I was doing client research for an hour. Yeah. Really, well, about 45 minutes of that was spent on ESPN, TMZ, and talking to the person that was in the office next to you. If you track all that, you'll be able to see all the leakage.
Got it.
And I'm not telling you to do this for the rest of your life. Do it for about a week.
Yeah, that's a really good example, because man, how do I do this? I don't want to sound like, I got it all together, but there is this thing about people ask me, how do you do everything that you do? Because I have a lot of different things that I've got going on.
You do all the things. That's right.
I do a lot of things. And, I am very conscious of wasted time. I'm very conscious of combining things. For example, like if I have two things that I can do, and one is fairly mindless, another one takes a little bit of concentration, I may combine them simply just because I can do one while I'm doing another thing. Like, for example, let's say that there is something, working out. You know, I can work out and I can be listening to a book on tape or something like that. You know, things like that.
Book on tape. You just showed our age.
Oh, I know. Tape. Yeah, tape. Digital book, whatever. But yeah, I tend to combine things, and I like walking my dog and then, doing, listening to the daily audio Bible or something.
And that's one of the things that can work, but I have to help people get really honed in on the myth of multitasking, because it can work, but the problem is right now we're having a phone interview. If I decide to start checking my phone because somebody sent me a text, I am not doing two things at the same time. I am screwing up two things at the same time.
Yeah, because both of them actually require concentration.
Correct.
Walking my dog doesn't.
That's right.
So you have to be very specific about that.
That's right. That's an unconscious thing while you're doing a conscious thing. That's okay, but people think that we're all these brilliant multitaskers, and the reality is we're monotasking. We're just switching back and forth very quickly.
So one of the things that you said that intrigued me, that said, I got to get Charles to come back in here. And speaking to Charles Alexander, it is his website is yourcharlesalexander.com. He is a business coach and helping people with entrepreneurs with their businesses. You said something about, and I would think it was Warren Buffett that you were actually quoting. And it was the idea that successful people have a tendency to say no to everything. Now, he was exaggerating, I guess, as he's wont to do.
His quote is that the difference between successful people and very successful people is that very successful people say no to almost everything.
Almost is the key.
So the idea, and what I think even sparked this interview or conversation, is that for everything you say yes to, which is great, you've immediately said no to two other things.
Yes, and I think I think it's key to understand you don't say no to everything, because for me, one of the things that I found throughout my life is that when opportunities walk through the door, people, how did you choose what to do, Paul? And I said, well, things would happen. People would ask me to do something, and I'd go, you know what? That makes sense. And I didn't say no immediately just because I thought I couldn't do it or it was scary. I would look at it as God has opened a door.
Sure.
And, it would be incumbent upon me to walk through a door that he has opened. Tell him, you've got a book. How's the book stuff been going?
Man, the book stuff's been going pretty well. I haven't pushed it nearly as much as I should. But
go ahead, push it.
All right. Well, Start Now, Quit Later. The How to Start and Grow a Business Without Quitting Your Full-Time Job is a book I published, last July. But it's done well. I've talked to several people about it. It's one of the few things that I'm kind of really passionate about, talking about narrowing down the things you want to focus in on. And I've seen entirely too many people launch a business after they've quote unquote burned the boats, cashed out the 401k and headed out the door. Yeah. And even in doing that, I've since launched my own podcast, Do More by Doing Less. And as Paul pointed out, it doesn't mean I want you to be lazy. I just want you to focus in on more of the things that matter. And, I've got a group coaching program going right now, how to create your own 4-day work week in 90 days or less. And that doesn't mean it has to be a strict 4-day work week, but I'm working with too many entrepreneurs. Their 4-day work week looks like an 8-day work week, and they're plugging in 70, 80 hours and missing out. They've got money freedom. They don't have time freedom, which kind of kills the point of the money freedom.
Right, exactly. What's the purpose of money? To express the values that you hold dear.
That's right. And so many people you talked about, why do you earn money? Well, they want to get their freedom. Well, their money, unfortunately, the way they went about it created the opposite.
Yeah, exactly. So, we talked about that book, and you can check out, there's a podcast on it where Charles and I are talking about his book. So you can scroll through my website and find that. Okay, so we were talking about people that have a tendency to say yes to everything because they tend to be a little bit of a people pleaser personality type, where, maybe when they're young, they got through something that was difficult by just being nice. Nobody beats up the nice kid. Nobody beats up the kid that makes you laugh all the time. Nobody, beats up the kid that can beat you up. So some people get through life by fighting. So what is it about people pleasing and saying yes to everything? You say you have stories about that. What does that look like?
In in general, when you're thinking about, especially if you're an entrepreneur, as a, if you're in the first 5-10 years, people want you to be on every board, serve on every committee, help in any way possible. The old, can I pick your brain, which I bet Paul probably gets on a weekly, if not more so basis, if somebody wants to have a cup of coffee with him around the corner and have him regurgitate everything that somebody else has to pay him for usually, which is a nice thing to do. But at some point, if you say yes to every opportunity, you have to realize anytime you say yes to something, you are saying no to probably a couple of other things that might be more important. So in looking at doing that, and make sure folks understand I'm saying this the right way. It happens more, I think, to mamapreneurs than it does to guys or dads, because they have a heavier heart and they're, get a real thing called mom guilt.
Sure.
And I'll make sure I won't lie to my wife and tell her I didn't interview today, but using her as an example, she has served on every board, every PTO thing. Every time one of the kids asks her to do something that she might not have got to do when she was a kid, she'll do. Or the same as with her family, or even mine, asking her to take on this or go do that. And how do you say no? You want to be helpful. You want everybody to have the experience they want, but she has her own bookkeeping business.
Right. And
she's recently taken on new clients. And, do we have time for it? She still wants to be the one that does a lot of the mom stuff, or, the house chores. All those things add up. So what takes the hit? Well, now I can't go to the gym like I wanted. Now I can't go hang out with my friend Kim like I wanted. Now I can't, we were gonna go on a date or whatever. And I'm saying it's her. I do the same thing.
Sure.
It's easier to pick on her because I'm watching.
Right. Well, and I think that's an issue of boundaries. A boundary would be, hey, I am absolutely blown away that you're asking me to do this, but I know what will happen is that I'll actually not be able to do as good of a job as you need and as you deserve. And I really need to, I had to, pass this up, but I really need to turn this down because it's actually not going to be good for anybody.
100%. Yes. And I've had people say, well, what do I say? And the way you just said it is 100%. I've been asked, I get asked regularly to serve on this board, this committee, whatever. And I've had to learn to say, hey, right now, and I'm telling the truth.
Yeah.
And this is for anybody listening who wants to ask me to be on something. It's like, I'm actually cutting things right now. I'm not adding anything. In fact, I am, I'm serving on this or I'm doing that. I'm cutting that. And here's a quick follow-up that people will try to guilt you into. Well, okay, what would you help find the replacement I'm looking for? And you can also tell them, I would love to, but the last 2 times I did that turned into a full-time thing.
Right. So, and I can't be responsible for what somebody else is going to do. That it's always very frustrating to try to choose somebody or try to refer somebody to somebody. Then all of a sudden they disappoint you, and then you feel bad because it's just.
So here's what I often tell folks: when you're trying to evaluate whether or not you're going to take on a new opportunity, role, or whatever, and you feel the reason we do it more than not is guilt. It's not because we are ambitious, because we love it, because somebody complimented us, and now we feel like we have to reciprocate, and it's an uneven match. So if you're asked to do something that you don't feel like you've got time, so first of all, ask, is this a heck yes, I want to do it because I'm excited? If it's not, then okay, then maybe not. And then the other thing is like, how much does it recur? Is it a one-time thing? Is there any other way to accomplish that task? But then you have to look at, if I take this on, it's really only about an hour a week. Okay, well, hour a week, once you do the math on, it's really 2 hours a week. Well, then it turns into 3 because you're using your brain, your cognition to think of whatever this task is you've been dealt. So that's 12 hours a month. Great. Do you have 12 hours a month? If you do, what will you not do now in order to take on this new task? And sometimes
that's a hard one. Yeah.
Hey, sometimes it's totally worth it. But if if I'm taken away from TV or doom scrolling, great.
No, not a problem.
Yeah. If it's to take on something that makes the world a better place and I might not get to use it, that's fine. But if it means I'm taking on 12 hours of drudgery that I hate, that turns into, an extra 12 hours of me doing mental gymnastics over how bad I hate it and I'm losing sleep, then what's the trade-off? Well, you're not going to get to go to Lane's practice tonight, or you're not taking Lily to voice, or, you don't get to do some house chores that make the rest of the family happy, whatever it is. That's how you have to weigh out each of those decisions. And the reason I tell people, like, look, start off by saying no. You can go, I use the same thing with the kids.
Yes.
You can go back and say yes later. If you say yes out of the gate, it's almost impossible to undo it.
Right. And saying no, it's almost like exposure therapy.
Yeah.
The idea of exposure therapy, if you don't know what that is, it's where you're progressively introducing something that you're afraid of in your life, and just seeing if you can get over some of the fears that you have. And I use the example of spiders all the time. Put the spider inside of a fish tank at first, and then eventually take away the top off the fish tank. Then the third step, you take the fish tank away and you put the spider on the table, and little by little,
me anxiety.
I know it is. But what happens is, by saying no, because we typically think the whole world's going to end if I tell somebody no. And,
that's right.
And, by just trying it on the little things, and you start to find out that no, people don't dislike you. They start to respect that you have boundaries around your time.
That's right. That's another thing I've told people, because I have clients that say, well, you don't understand my business. And whatever business they say, they think their business, I'm a landscaper, salon, coach, insert whatever here.
Yeah.
My clients need me 24/7. So recently I had this client that has a custom cabinetry business. It has exploded, and great for her. But she was responding to texts at 2 a.m. from clients.
My goodness.
Like this last one was up watching HGTV, and Chip and Joanna Gaines saw, we're doing something. So she thought she had to text her right away. So here's how we're going to set some boundaries. And, it's easy to do.
Paul Winkler, along with my friend Charles Alexander, yourcharlesalexander.com is his website. Author, coach to entrepreneurs and people trying to just get their lives a little bit. You don't even have to be an entrepreneur to get your life straight around some of these things. I mean, we talk about the stuff that we waste time on, and, the things that we need to eliminate from our lives because we can't seem to get anything done.
Right.
I'm overwhelmed. I can't get anything done. I can't, I don't have enough time. We all have the same amount of time. So what do you eliminate?
So that's some of the first things I do when I try to help somebody figure this out. Paul was bemoaning the fact I can't track what I do all week. And I say, Paul, well, he would do it. The first thing I do is try to help folks get some easy wins. So easy wins for you is trying to figure out, what can I get out of the way right now that is taking my time that I'm not getting a return investment on. So for those of you, let's say iPhone users, go to your settings, go to screen time, and then see how long you're on your phone each day.
Right.
And I have a lot of people that, may not even have that feature turned on. Turn it on. Because if you're not checking that regularly, you talking about having your mind blown, you'll see very quickly the average person, I'm on there about maybe an hour or two.
Yeah.
The average, and this is not, picking on millennials, Gen Z, or whatever's below.
Right.
It's us. It's Xers and boomers that are on these things 4,
Adults
5,
much older than that.
6 hours a day.
Sure.
And, it'll even, your phone, and this is the same for Samsung. I think there's, it's, if you go under settings, it's like digital wellness or something frou-frou term. But the concept is it'll show you very quickly, okay, well, you've been on your phone this much. And as a matter of fact, here's the exact apps that you have been using. So for anybody that's an entrepreneur or busy professional says, well, you don't understand, I need my phone to contact clients or do meetings. You'll see, I've been on Facebook, TikTok, or insert whatever here for the average of 2.5 hours a day. That is stealing my time. I am not getting a return on investment for it. So we get caught into this, any benefit model, which steals or we use to justify how we lose our time. We'll pick on social media. Let's just say Facebook. And people will say, yeah, but you don't understand. I'm not really on there that much. I just check on my grandkids or the news of the day. So the way I help people math that out, especially with the phone. So if you take your average phone use from 5 hours down to 2, and by the way, 2 is still too many, but that will save you 3 hours a day. 3 hours a day, you do the math over the course of a year is like a couple of months if you're awake, the time you're awake. So then you can start weighing out, is TikTok and Facebook or whatever you're using your phone for that important to, well, I like it. Okay, well, is it worth 2 months of your life? Is it worth a year out of every 6 staring immediately at your phone? Then you can weigh out appropriately. Okay, well, maybe I should eliminate it for a little bit. So what I tell folks is to go on a 1-week detox. delete the things from turn off all the notifications except for text messages from immediate family members.
Okay.
Turn everything else off just to see what happens. And typically what will happen is you'll save not just a little bit of time, you'll save hours that week. You'll save mental preparation. You'll save your sanity a little bit. But what also happens is you might miss one small thing, and people will take that one small thing and say, oh, I got to turn everything else back on because we missed the neighborhood birthday party. Well, you also saved 7 hours of your life. So you weigh that out. I mean, what is your hourly rate? Well, I make $100 an hour. All right, well, would you pay $700 to know about a birthday party that you didn't want to go to in the first place? That's how I start helping folks think of what am I eliminating here.
That's interesting, monetizing it. So what I think is interesting is I listen to you say that, and I've heard people say, well, when you pick up your phone, think about what you're looking for. Are you looking for connection? Are you looking for somebody to affirm you and tell you you're good, or tell you, that somebody liked a post that you put on or something like that? But I think that there's more the reason, as I think about it, why people pick up the phone all the time is they're avoiding something.
That's right.
And, there may be something that they don't want to do. They don't want to, so they can put it off and they can go and jump into the phone. There's one, they can avoid things they don't feel like doing. And then part of the reason that they're able to easily avoid is because they don't really have a defined purpose or goal. And how do you get people to define their purpose and goal? And are there things that you tend to do to help them?
Well, that goes back to what is your priority? What's the things that you should be doing that you enjoy doing, you're good at doing, that other people are appreciative of? And that's how, you'll hear it called all different things, your calling or zone of genius or whatever it is. And then that's why I say it's so important to track things throughout the course of 1 week. Then you can go back and get a real clear vision of how much time did I spend, let's say, doom scrolling versus teaching, in my case, teaching a workshop that I really got a kick out of, or how much time did you spend on the radio or with a one-on-one with a client or whatever it is, the thing is you think you should be doing, because you can get a good basis of comparison at that point. And then anytime you see that you got lopsided and your percentage of time was spent doing things you didn't really want to do versus what you wanted to do, then you can figure out very quickly, well, you have a choice. I can keep doing that because, as you said, they're avoiding the harder work, and that's a whole separate issue.
It's the hard work that actually leads to the good stuff.
It is.
You think about, when we go through hardships and, the pain and the problems of it, that's when you come out. It's like working out.
Well, it's like tearing your muscle. When I say tearing, it's working out, tearing the muscle to let it regrow. But if you just kind of walk 2 miles an hour on the treadmill, it's never going to happen. So the reason... going back to why do we pick up the phone? We're killing the little sense of boredom. And there's tons of studies that back up the fact that once we start in on a project, and once we get less than 1 minute into it, your lizard brain kicks in and says, there's probably an email over there. We should probably check see what Paul
FOMO.
said. Yeah, 100%.
You're missing something.
And we indulge in it every time, and it takes you from task to task to task. I think Gloria Mark does a research on this every 5 years at the UC Santa Barbara. I may have that wrong, where they will track how long it takes us to stay on one task and how long it takes us to get into a point of focus where we're making a difference. And it's about 23 minutes. 23 minutes you're locked in. Yeah. But they started that study by interrupting people. So Paul would sit down at the computer and they would interrupt him.
Yeah.
Well, she did it like in 09 and 16 and, recently. And they quit interrupting people because they found out they didn't have to. You would self-interrupt every 42 seconds, and you would jump around.
Isn't that interesting? So it's our focus and our time, and it's like I've told people about the study on commercials. If you look at them, it used to change scenes every 3 seconds. Now it's every 1 second. Yep. So it's... it feeds that attention deficit issue.
So, going back to what you're saying, I try to help people really figure out what to eliminate, what to detox from, that they can start focusing on the things that they really want to do. Now, there's still other things in life you have to do that aren't in the priority bucket, and I tell them to batch those other items.
I was just going to say, so you have a few things that you like to do. Batching, describe that.
So batching being like, if I get ready to clean the house this weekend, I got 3 kids at home. Our house looks like a disaster zone on a regular basis. So when you clean the house, you batch items together. You don't start, halfway loading the dishwasher and then quit and then run off to the bathroom and clean the toilet and then run off to the bonus room and vacuum half of it and then run down to your bedroom and make up the bed. You don't skip around like that. You go to, let's say you go to one room, you go top to bottom, wipe everything down, vacuum clean, and then, you move to the next room and the next room and the next room. You batch those like items together.
It's like organizing a closet. You put all your suit tops on, one in the one shelf, and then you put all your shirts in another one.
Dude, I bet your closet is
no,
just,
it's not.
Yeah. But like
don't even go there.
So even like with a financial advisor, the really smart financial advisors that I've worked with in the past, the ones that create their own content, that do portfolio reallocation on their own, that meet with clients, they don't skip around all day. And a lot of people will do that. They'll set up their day to where it has a quote unquote a lot of variety, but they're going from random project, from a sales call to a meeting to internet research to an Excel spreadsheet. But you want to batch those like items together because back to the Gloria Mark study, you want to get into a zone of focus. So Paul, he wants to do all of, a lot of his podcast stuff all in a row, record it and send it on. He wants to meet with clients all in a row, send it on, because you get into that zone of focus and you're getting really good at that. I tell people to do this not just with basic tasks, but for those of you making sales calls, batch those together. And that by the time you get to that third or fourth one, you're closing everybody because you're locked in.
Well, and you might have like a day where you just spend nothing but preparing for the meetings.
Yes.
And then you have a day that's nothing but meetings. And then you have a day that's nothing but just downtime to recharge your battery.
Dude, it's just like being an athlete or even, an actor. They have these full days. So if you're an athlete, you have a practice day, you have a game day, you have a rest day.
That's a great example.
But the same way, if you're an actor, they have a practice day, they have an acting day, they have a decompression day. If you can get to a point, and business owners, you have way more control over this than not. But I have a prospecting day, I have a content creation day, I have a data entry day, usually Friday because I'm burnt out by then. And
right.
I've got this pile of paperwork that I've yet to do the next thing with, and the next thing in the point of this discussion is figuring out what some of those batched items are that I can either offload, can I outsource them or automate them?
So we ought to talk about that after. There are a couple other things that you talk about and how to deal with outsourcing and delegating, because I do everything better than anybody else.
I know you do.
Okay, I do everything better than anybody else.
Don't know that Paul gets up and goes and edits and plays with the fancy thing over here.
Yeah. Don't tell on me. Right. I'm Paul Winkler, listening to the Investor Coaching Show here with Charles Alexander of yourcharlesalexander.com. So we're just talking about, and we started off talking about how Warren Buffett has this thing about, that really, really super successful people have a tendency to say no to most things. And really making sure that you're saying yes to the right things and not filling your time up with things that just really aren't that important to you.
Correct.
It gets down to it, not important to you, not important to your family, and the people that really matter, because nobody's going to go to their deathbed going, hey, man, I wish I worked more.
Wish I just had one more day in the office.
just one more day at the office, right? So we talked a little bit about batching things, and we're trying to put things together that all are alike so that we're not wasting time jumping from one thing to another. Talk about outsourcing, and delegating.
This is one of the few things that folks really don't, they hold off on as long as humanly possible, and I have too. So the idea, stretching it all the way back, we're stretched thin, we're tired, we're doing more, getting less results. And if you're exhausted with it, you got to figure out where your time's going and then make decisions. And as we talked earlier, you work on the things you're supposed to be working on and then either eliminate, batch. So at this point, we're talking about automating and delegating, getting rid of some stuff. So in addition to all of this, I've got my own business creating explainer videos, these little animated videos for financial advisors and insurance agents. And for years, I did not practice what I preach, by the way. I never do. I had to hire my own business coach. I was my worst client, but I was doing everything. I was doing all of the content writing, all of the solicitation, all the sales calls. And then I would write the script, and then I would storyboard, and then I would create the video, and then I would implement, and I would follow up. And I got to a point where I was exhausted. So I thought, I'm going to have to start doing some of this crap I talk about. So I started, tracking everything I was doing and what could I do that I could, now get rid of. So a lot of things I was able, we'll talk about automation first, because AI is here. It's not, it's not the future. We're living in maximum overdrive, folks. The
people
Matrix
are so scared of it. You talk about it, people are, and they demonize it. It's going to be horrible. Are there some negative? Yes, there always can be.
We've been using automation for hundreds of years.
Yes.
It's just gotten way easier for the average person to suddenly grab onto. And I know that there's some downside to it. But talking about this in general, you know, for me, when I'm still doing that business, reaching out people directly on LinkedIn, you know, just send them a message, say, hey, I saw this. Would you like this? There's, you know, some tools that help me automate some of that process. And you know, you still sound like a human, still have a nice touch, and then you can jump into the conversation with whoever. That saved me hours. And then even after then, I found a virtual assistant across planet Earth who was highly skilled, more skilled than I was. Hey, look, you know, I'm getting a bunch of these replies. I don't have time to follow up with anybody. Can you do them? And I give you, you know, these 7 scenarios. If they say this, you do this. If they say this, you do this.
Oh,
and then schedule stuff out for us. But that's part of what you have to start looking at.
And part of it is, you know, I look at people have skills, they have talents, and you're robbing them of their ability to bless you by trying to do everything
yourself. That's what they want to do.
Yeah, that's what they want to do. And maybe it's not what you want to do. Charles, this has been a blast. You're CharlesAlexander.com, author, coach to entrepreneurs. We're going to have to do this again.